Hello, and welcome to the CyberRes presentation of Secure and Compliant Test Data Management, a use case of Structured Data Manager. My name is Brian Majora, and I'm part of the pre-sales organization for Voltage in North America. Before we get into a demonstration of secure data management, providing test data management, let's talk a little bit about exactly what test data management is and what we're going to be showing you. So in my system, I have a production database. Now, that production database may contain sensitive data in it that you would not want developers or testers or QA or training non-production users to see. But essentially what we're going to provide is we're going to leverage that data in the production database, create a subset extraction, so a smaller instance of that data set, less records, and anonymize that information and provide it to developers and testers. The key is that developers and testers will get a full referentially intact set of data. It'll be a smaller set of data than was in production. And the data will look and feel like real data. It will have real names, real addresses, real social things that would look like real social security numbers, but they will not be the real information from production. It will be anonymized. In terms of the actual demonstration agenda, these are the steps that I'm going to go through. The first thing that we're going to do in the demonstration is I'm going to show you the production database that I have. We're going to attach to that using the Web Console Data Discovery module, and we're going to scan for sensitive data. Once we understand which columns contain which types of sensitive data, we're going to generate dictionaries from the Data Discovery console. And what a dictionary is it's a random shuffled sample of data from those sensitive columns within the production database. Once we've generated the dictionaries, we're going to switch out of the Web Console and move over to Structured Data Manager Designer. We're going to model the production database, enabling us to create a referentially intact subset of the data from production. The next step we're going to do in Designer is select required masking routines that we will use to shuffle or mask or anonymize specifically the data in the columns that contain sensitive information. Once our design is complete, we'll deploy that design back to our Web Console, where it can be then where that extract can then be executed against the production database, resulting in a subset of safe and fake data that still looks real, confirming the anonymized nature of the data. And then we'll finally look at how we can upload that extract to a test or development instance using our test data management extension. So let's get started. Let's start with our production database. What you see here is I have a database with a series of tables, contract, billing, order entry systems. This is my real production data. I have testers that need an anonymized subset of this data so that they can perform their testing. So let's start in our Web Console, where we'll bring up our discovery solution that'll allow us to scan this database and determine which columns contain sensitive data that would require masking. On the console here, I've pointed my discovery module at that particular database, and I've done a scan, and you can see from the result readout here that I have 180 columns that are determined safe and 33 columns in the red here that contain some type of sensitive data. Clicking on this database takes me inside the database where I can start to see the risk and the number of sensitive fields per table. On further into the table list, I can see which tables contain the most amount of risk. So you can see I've got a customer table here with 15 columns that contain some type of sensitive information and 3 columns that contain something that we think looks relatively safe. Clicking on the customer table takes us into the column view. Now I can start to see we're looking at each column and the type of sensitivity that we found within each column. We can see we found data that looks like email addresses, data that looks like postal code, gender, but we also found some very sensitive things that look like social security numbers, things that look like credit card numbers. So these are the columns that I'm going to need to anonymize to make safe in my subset that I provide to testers. Once we've performed a discovery scan and we understand what type of sensitive data lies within which columns, then we'll create our dictionaries that we're going to use. So clicking on remediation, generate masking, we'll specifically create a dictionary file for each column that contains some type of sensitive information. We'll use those later when we go to mask our extract, our subset extract. Again, we'll randomly sample from our dictionary now and substitute the values of the records that we pull out of production. With that in place, we switch over to our design time interface. This is Structured Data Manager Designer. From here, we model the production database and use parameters to determine how we are going to sample data from that database. So in here, I've added a little bit of PostgreSQL in here to say that we're going to be getting a random sample and we want to limit it to some number of records. So the tester or the developer who's performing the extract, at the time of extract, they can decide here how many records they would like to have in their subset. All of these are options. This is the option that I've chosen to illustrate that capability. Once it's modeled and we know how we're going to subset, then we need to start deciding how we're going to mask the specific sensitive fields. So what I've done is I've created a cartridge over here on the left for my billing tables. And I've said, okay, from the discovery, we determined we had credit card information, email information, first name, last name, social security number. In here, I actually decide, okay, for the data that comes out of each record, take the email address and randomly substitute it with a unique value from our email dictionary. Randomly get a first name value from our dictionaries. Randomly get a last name, a phone number. For credit card and social security number, I'm actually going to use a voltage secure data format preserving encrypted value. Still going to look like a credit card and still going to look like a social security number. So this illustrates our direct integration with voltage secure data to not just scramble and randomize certain fields, but actually to perform encryption and protect the data through format preserving encryption. Once I have this set, I will deploy this cartridge back to my web console for execution. In the web console, I can select our test data management extension. So let me change over to my Postgres database project. See here, I have several data generation cases. One for billing, invoice, order, contracts. Well, just before in Designer, I created my billing extract to determine how it was going to subset and how things were going to get masked. Simply by clicking on this green arrow here to run, that's going to run that cartridge, which will attach to production, extract a subset, mask the data in those columns, and upload that data to my test database instance. Let's have a look at the databases before we actually run that though. As I mentioned before, this is my production data. This is where data is going to be coming from. I have my customer table and my customer production data. Now I've created a non-production database, which will be my target for my subset of an anonymized data. In here, I have the same database name, the same schema, but I do not have any tables or any data in my QA database yet. So going back to our test data management interface, I'm going to run my create billings test case. And the first thing that it's going to do is ask me how many records I would like to extract. So I could have hundreds of thousands or millions of records in my header table. But this gives me my ability to define how many records I would like to show up in my test or my development instance. So let's go with 100 to start. I'm going to choose what that instance name is. And remember, we were going to put it into our quality assurance or our QA database as our target. And then I simply hit run. So SDM is currently connecting to the production database, performing that extraction, masking the data in that extraction, and uploading that data to my QA Postgres instance. Looks like it's finished completed. Let's go back and look at the actual data now. So as you recall before, this was our production data. Jack Jones was customer number 1. Paul Sanchez is customer number 2. All of this data is real data that a QA or development tester should not see. Looking at our Postgres database where we push things to into our QA instance, now you can see we have new tables in there with new data. Clicking on my QA database, sorting by customer ID, you can see I've got a customer ID of number 14, which is now Clev Fields. Customer 14, now there is no Clev Fields in the real world. If I come back to my production database and look at number 14, that used to be Vivian Moore. Scrambled the credit card number. We've scrambled the social security number. Going back to that QA database, this person, Clev Fields, this credit card number has been encrypted with voltage. This social security number has been encrypted with voltage. This email address has been swapped out and anonymized with another user. So all of this data looks relatively real, but isn't real, and nobody's sensitive or private information can be compromised by non-production users. So that was a quick look at the process that we went through. Scan that data for sensitive information, generate our dictionaries and create our subsetting data model, select how we're going to mask and how we're going to anonymize and protect that data, and actually execute and view the results of that. Overall, what was accomplished is we took production data, made a small subset of it, and anonymized it and provided it to non-production use cases. It looks like real data, it feels like real data, but it is not real data. It is a safe instance of data for non-production users. If you would like more information on secure, compliant test data management, you can reach out to me at brianmajora@microfocus.com or contact your local CyberRes Voltage security representative. Thanks very much.